Hi, let's talk about raises. So this is a series of videos, and in the last video, we talked about the fact that you may not feel that you need to ask for a raise because your company has specific scheduled raise times. So if you know you're going to get a raise every year or every 6 months, you might be wondering, why should I bother talking to my boss about raises? Well, that may be true, but here's what I want you to think about, that unless you talk to your boss about a raise, you might not get the best raise possible. So maybe you'll get a 3% raise like everybody else. But if you talked to your boss, maybe you would get a 6% raise. So it's important to talk to your boss about a raise. And when you talk to your boss, you want to start talking to your boss before raise time. Because if you're talking a week before, or even when you sit down with your boss and your boss is telling you about your raise, it's too late. So I suggest starting to talk a couple of months beforehand. And when you talk to your boss, you want to clearly ask for what you want, not hint, not hope, and not suggest. Instead, you want to talk to your boss about the fact that you want an increase in your salary. And then after you ask, you want to stop talking and let silence work for you. Because it's more likely when we're asking that we'll get nervous, and then we'll add things like, I know it's probably not a good time, or I know that this is difficult for the company. Just ask and stop and let your boss talk. So those were the key things that we talked about last time. Now, who am I and how can I help you? So I'm an author of 10 books. And if you look in the middle, that's my newest book, Increase Your Income, 7 Rules for Women Who Want to Make More Money at Work, with my wonderful co-author, Jill Ferguson. And that has very practical information that you can use, 7 rules, to get more money at work, whether it's a raise at your current job or whether you're negotiating a new salary for a new job and you want to get a higher salary for that. It's the same information. Now, the book on the right, called A Salary Cinderella Story, or How to Make More Money Without a Fairy Godmother, I wrote that a couple of years ago. And that's got the same basic information, the same 7 rules that I've been teaching women for many years, but we spun it into a story. So it's actually a parable. And it's a woman who's unhappy at work because she wants to get a raise and a promotion, and it shows how she uses those 7 rules. So in addition to being an author, I'm a business coach, and I coach men and women to be more successful at work. I have been a corporate trainer. I've worked in HR for global tech companies for many years. And the reason I bring that up is I know what happens behind the scenes when people get or don't get raises. I also spent almost 10 years working at a company called Women Unlimited, where I coached and trained high potential women from Fortune 1000 companies. And so the fact is, I have helped many, many other people, and I want to be able to help you. So let's talk about our topic for today. And our topic for today is that you might not want to talk to your boss about a raise because your boss might say no, or your boss might get mad. So let me tell you the story about the first time I asked for a raise. So I was really prepared. I had done all this external research. I had put together all the things I had done for the company. I mean, I had practiced. I was ready. Even though I was nervous my boss might say no, I felt, I had a good reason. So I walked in, and my boss did say no right away. There wasn't even a discussion. He just said no. And I was devastated. I just thought, I was so embarrassed. I thought, how could I do that? I totally messed up. I went home. Now, fortunately, I talked to a friend of mine, and I was just telling her what a terrible job I did. And she said, well, did you ask him why? The answer was no. And I said, oh, no, obviously I'm not doing a good job. Obviously, I shouldn't even be at that company. Obviously, he doesn't like my work. And as I was saying it, I realized, well, actually, that wasn't really obvious. Maybe that's not what he meant at all. And so I thought about it some more, and we talked some more. And so what I did is I went in the next day. Now, you have to remember, I wanted to quit my job right after my boss said no, because I was just so embarrassed. So I went in the next day and I said, yesterday we talked about a raise, and you said no, and I just want to get a better understanding. Can you help me understand why the answer was no? And he said, oh yeah, of course. It's because it's not raise time. And this was early in my career. That's when I first realized that there were for certain companies, particular raise time. And raise time was not for a couple of months. Now, first of all, I felt much better about it, but then it became a really good discussion. So I said, let's talk about it. Can you help me to make sure I get the best raise possible when it is raise time? And he said, oh yeah, of course. And so for the next couple of months, we worked on that. So the real reason I tell you this story is I want you to realize that your boss might say no, but that's not the end. It gave me a chance to talk to my boss. And if your boss does say no, there are ways to turn it into a yes. So I don't want you to be afraid of no, because there are plenty of times that I work with women that they say, I'm afraid my boss is going to say no, and their boss says yes. And they've been surprised over that. So don't let a no stop you. Now, again, another thing that you might be worried about is that your boss might be mad besides saying no. So let's talk about your boss being mad. And again, that's something that I don't really often hear, because bosses don't get mad about asking for a raise as long as you do it in a reasonable way. So here's what I recommend if you're starting to think, I don't want my boss to get mad. I'm going to talk about 2 raise rules. The first one is raise rule number 1. It's business, it's not personal. And then the other is raise rule number 4, work with your boss. And the reason I say that is a lot of times when we think about talking to our boss about a raise, we think about fighting with our boss, or our boss is stopping us from getting money, when nothing could be further from the truth. The fact is your boss probably wants to give you a good raise to keep you happy and keep you there, but he or she has to work with human resources and negotiate with their boss. So it's not so easy. So the idea is when you're using raise rule number 1 and raise rule number 4, it helps you to take the emotion out of it and think about asking for a raise as a project you're working on with your boss. So think about it this way. If you had to go to your boss and you had to say, Project X needs some additional funding, would your boss get mad at you? Well, no, because you're working on a project together. So all you have to do is substitute that the project is you getting an increase in salary. So by you asking, as long as you don't get emotional, and as long as you're reasonable in your request and you have some good information to back up, your boss shouldn't be mad at you. In addition, let me add something else. So I spoke to one woman who she did a really good job in asking her boss for a raise. She went through the whole process. And at the end, her boss did give her a raise. And he said, you know, now I understand why the customers really like to work with you. And so what happened was she did this so well that her boss really saw her as a great communicator, a great negotiator, and a great problem solver. And so that's really what you want to do. You not only want to get the raise, but you also want to keep or even build that relationship with your boss. And if you do it right, if you communicate well, and you look at it as though you're solving a problem together, your boss can think the same way this other boss did. Your boss can think, wow, that person really has done a good job. So it's important that you think about it that way. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of things that you need to know. So don't be like me. Number 1, learn how your company handles raises. So if you don't know, you can ask your boss, you can go to your human resources person, find out, when it happens each year, what the rules are, especially if you haven't been at the company that long, or sometimes companies are changing things, but make sure you understand what all the rules are. And then number 2, if your boss does say no to you, like my boss did, ask a good follow-up question. Like, can you help me understand what's getting in the way? Now, I need to be really clear about this. You need to ask in a curious problem-solving way. You can't say, hey, what's the matter? Why did you say no? Instead, it's, can you help me to understand what's getting in the way? Or, I'd never thought about that. Can you tell me what's going on or what's stopping this? So you can see that you have to ask it again in a curious problem-solving way, just like if your boss said no to additional funding for a project, you can say, really, what's stopping you here? But again, it has to be curious and problem solving. And finally, there are going to be times, or there may be times, when your boss says no to you. And it's because your boss is going to say your work doesn't deserve it. Now, that is horrible to hear. I get that. However, it's important to hear. And if your boss tells you that, thank your boss for giving you the information and then work to take action to change it. Because here's the thing. Wouldn't you rather know before raise time while you still have time to make changes? So if your boss sits down with you and says it's raise time, you're only getting a 1% raise because I don't think your work deserved it, or no raise at all, I would be really upset. I would much rather find that out 3 months before, so I have a chance to talk to my boss and say, okay, specifically what needs to change in order for me to get the best raise possible. And then my boss can see that I'm changing, because again, I'm working with my boss on this. So I know none of us want to hear no, but sometimes a no can turn into a yes in the future. So it's important for you to talk to your boss early on. Now, you might be thinking, well, this does make sense. Maybe I should ask for a raise, but I just don't feel confident. I'm just really just unsure about that. Okay, so let's talk about that. In the next video, I'll tell you some specific steps that you can take that will help you to be more confident. Now, if you're watching this on social media, click the link in the first comment to get on the list to get the video sent to you so you don't miss it, because I will post this next one in 2 days. You'll also get a quiz, 15 common raise mistakes women make and how to avoid or fix them. I want to make sure that you see the next videos, because we're going to go a little bit deeper into these different areas to give you some more tips that can help you. Now, if you have any questions, go ahead and send them to me. I'm Laura Brown, laura.brown@careertipsforwomen.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you will join me for future videos. Thanks so much. Bye.